Lesson 06 is measurement. We are doing this in replace of lesson 6.3. We're going to start off by looking at standard units of measure, the inch, foot, yard, and mile, and you see those listed there with their abbreviations. You should already be familiar with these and their abbreviations, and what I want to ask you now is this. Can you think of something that you can measure in inches? What would be an example of something that would be good to be measured in inches? Jarrett?
A pencil?
A pencil would be perfect. You could measure how many inches tall the pencil is. What about measuring something in feet? What would be good to measure in feet? Cheyenne? A person. Perfect. How many feet tall is that person? Perfect. Okay, what about yards? I've gotten the standard answer all day long about yards. Tyler? A soccer field. Good. I've heard football field all day long, but a soccer field would work as well. That's great. And finally, a mile. What would you use, or what would we use a mile on? What would we use a mile on, Sophie?
A track.
A track, definitely. How many miles around the track? How many miles down the road from your house to town or something like that. So miles is a bigger one. Now, we are going to convert from one unit to the next using inches, feet, yards, and miles. And there's the way that we do this. If you're going from a bigger unit, that means from one of the ones at the bottom up, you multiply. Okay, and if you're converting from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, so down this list, you divide. So if you go from a bigger to a smaller, you multiply. Smaller to a bigger, you divide. And we're going to try that. So let's see what happens here. In order to convert, you got to know what to multiply or divide by. So let's look at some conversions right here. I would expect that you know most of these. And in fact, I'm going to ask that you do know all these before we get to a quiz. For every foot, there's 12 inches. For every yard, there's 3 feet, which in turn means 36 inches. Now, for the miles, this one, I expect everybody in here to know 5,280 feet is equivalent to 1 mile. The yards, I don't know. That may not be a number that's just right at the top of your head, but you should be able to figure it out if you remember the 5,280. 5,280 feet, divide it by 3, and you'd get your 1,760 yards. Okay, those are both equivalent to 1 mile. Now, we are going to convert here 8 feet to inches. So, feet to inches, feet's bigger. So, since it's bigger, you're going to multiply. And you're going to take 8 times 12, because there are 12 inches for every feet, which would make it 96 inches. 96 inches. Okay, now we're going from feet to yards, and feet is smaller. We're going smaller to bigger, which means it says up here divide. So you're going to take 150 divided by 3. There are 3 feet to every yard. That's where we'll get 50. Okay, now I'm going to let you guys help me on the next couple. I need to go from 180 inches to feet, and inches is smaller to the bigger. So, Josh, 180 inches to feet, what am I going to do?
You're going to take 180 divided by 12.
How many inches in a foot? Yeah, 180 divided by 12. And when I do that, how many times does 12 go into 18?
Once.
Once. And when I subtract, what do I get?
6.
6, and bring down that 0. So 12 into 60. 5. And that is exactly 15 feet. Good. Okay, 3.5 miles to yards. So I'm going miles to yards. Miles is bigger. Bigger to smaller. We're going to multiply. Jared, what am I going to multiply 3.5 times?
You're going to take 3.5 miles times 1,760.
Okay, so I'm going to write 1,760 on top times 3.5. I'm going to write it like this so I only have to do 2 multiplications across. So Jared, let's multiply. 5 times 0, I'm going to give you 0. What about 5 times 6?
5 times 6 is 30.
Okay, so 5 times 7 plus 3.
38.
5 times 1 plus 3.
8.
Okay. I'm going to go 3 times 0 is my 0. What about 3 times 6?
3 times 6 is 18.
Okay, so I'm carrying the 1. 3 times 7 plus 1.
22.
And 3 times 1 plus 2.
That would be 5.
Okay, so we'll add this up vertically. We got 0, 0. What's 8 and 8? 16. 1, 8 and 2. And 5 and 1. Okay, Jared, I've got 1 decimal place in that problem. What does that tell me about my answer?
This guy has 1 decimal place.
Okay, got to move this over. So what's my answer for number of yards?
6,160.
6,160. Very good. Okay, questions about that? All right, let's look at, we've got one more of these. 6.25 feet to yards. So I'm going from a smaller to a larger, Megan. So what am I going to do with that 6.25 feet? I'm going to divide it by what? 3. So take this decimal straight up, and 3 goes into 6 how many times? 2. Okay, bring my 2 down. Now here's where some people mess up when they're dividing. How many times does 3 go into 2, Megan? 0. So don't forget to put that 0 up there. Bring down that 5. Now how many times does 3 go into 25? 8. And 1's left. Well, I got to add a 0. I can't just stop. How many times does 3 go into 10, Megan? 3. Okay, uh-oh, what's going to happen, Megan? It's going to repeat. So for my answer, what do you think I should put?
2.808.
I'm going to keep going and put repeating. 2.083 repeating. Questions about that? Okay, that's the standard unit. That's the kind of measurement we use in the United States. The whole rest of the world uses the metric system. That's why we're going to talk about King Hector. You ever heard this expression, King Hector died Monday, don't call Millie? Never have. Okay, well, now you have. We're going to talk about King Hector. I'm not quite sure who King Hector is, but I know Millie is my mother. So let me try to get this to move, and it won't, of course. Oh, I know why. Okay. So there's this expression, King Hector died Monday, don't call Millie. I would suggest you remember that because it is exactly the first letter in each one of those words that gives you the whole list of prefixes plus the base in the metric system. There is one mistake on here, and that is hecto, not Hector. But King Hector died Monday, don't call Millie. Those letters that I've got underlined represent either prefixes or a base. Now, this right here is the base. We are dealing with only lengths today, but that could just as easily be gram and liter. But are there any days of the week that begin with G or L? Nope, so that's why I went with Monday. So King Hector died Monday, don't call Millie. And if you can remember that, this metric conversion is going to be really, really simple for you. So if you have one letter by itself, it's going to be one of those at the base. These to the left are larger units than the base. These to the right are smaller. They're all prefixes that represent a portion of the main section, the base. Honestly, we're really only going to use kilo, centi, milli, and the main base. The other ones could be used, but they're not very widely used. In the world today, you talk about kilometers, centimeters, millimeters, but rarely do you talk about a hectometer or a decameter. So we're going to look at that. Now, let me show you this. This is really slick how this works. We want to convert 6.2 meters to centimeters. So it's really cool. You need to watch this. I am right here with my 6.2 meters. So make sure you're looking at the screen. If you're writing down, please stop and just watch. Right now I'm at 6.2 meters. I want to end up at centimeters. So that means I go 2 places to the right. So I take my 6.2 and take my decimal 2 places to the right. And there's an empty wave. What do I always put in empty waves? Zeros. So that is 620 centimeters. Now, 3.8 kilometers, and I want to go down to meters. Kilometer is here on the very far left. I'm there. I want to go down to meter. That is 1, 2, 3 places right. So I take my 3.8 and I move the decimal 1, 2, 3 places right. I add zeros in my empty waves, and I know that that is 3,800 meters. But do you see why you have to know King Hector died Monday, don't call Millie? Because you've got to use the first letter of every one of those words from left to right to make this work. Let's look at the next one. 12.3 meters. I'm right here. I want to go to kilometers. 1, 2, 3 steps left. Take this decimal. 1, 2, 3 steps left. 0.0123 kilometers. Last one. I'm at 14 millimeters. I'm right here. And I want to convert to centimeters. 1 place left. On the number 14, the decimal is here on the far right. When you don't see it, I move it 1 place left. 1.4 centimeters. But you've got to know King Hector died Monday, don't call Millie, and use the first letter in front of each of those words for it to work.